Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett, I'm here from Black Crow Gaming, and today I am going to be talking all about the Dataslate, what it sort of looks like for Dark Angels now, what the meta might be looking like, and what you can kind of get out of your Dark Angels army. Now, I did think of just doing like a little funny one which just went, cool, basically no changes. And then just moving on. But no, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what that new meta looks like. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think the majority of the changes, the generic Space Marine changes matter. The majority of changes don't actually matter to us. However, I think what is impactful is what that meta is going to look like now. So this very much is going to be an analysis of where we sit in the meta and what that might mean that we need to think about when we're building up our armies. And I will do a sample army. I have slightly changed it since I wrote it, but that's because I'm still kind of figuring out what the best thing is. That was kind of an initial reaction and sort of a feeling from playing against Ynnari and a couple of other things. But without further ado, let's jump straight into the slate. So, it's dropped. We know what's actually going on now. And just to give a quick rundown, if you haven't seen what's happened so far. So Bloodless Angels are gone. Basically, the change happened there that you must be using a detachment from Codex Adeptus Astartes to get the +1 to wound. So Bloodless Angels with their Liberator Assault group is gone, which is probably a good thing for the health of the overall game, because that was a little bit obnoxious, and it was doing very, very well. Obviously, has just won Manchester and came first and second, obviously with two very good players. But by the by, it's good, it's gone. Eldari and Bridgehead were also nerfed. Bridgehead got the worst of it. They lost their +1 to wound on drop, becoming a +1 to hit, which is a really major nerf because I think a lot of it was like, my plasma is now wounding your tanks on a 4 instead of a 5. Like, that was really major. So they got really stung with their points going up as well. So I'm not expecting to see as much Bridgehead anymore. I think there's still some good guard builds. I don't think it's Bridgehead anymore, which is actually probably good in terms of internal balance. I think there's going to be a lot more innovation because obviously that is a new book as well. We don't know what the best sort of list is so far, so I think that's quite exciting. And then Eldari took some light nerfs. I think overall we were a little bit surprised that they didn't take harder nerfs. I think that could equally be an element of like Eldari panic, because if you're around at the start of 10th, you obviously experience like the Wraith Knights, the triple warp spinners, all that kind of stuff, which was just utterly unenjoyable. So as soon as Eldari get a sniff of looking good, then it's like, oh my god, let's panic. And also, Ynnari do have some incredibly obnoxious rules in terms of their move blocking ability and things like that. And it's not an overly fun experience to go up against that because it is very move blocky and it's how they win. And it's like, it's more than fair because that's how they need to win the game. But in terms of like playability, I think that might take some more hits in future if it became really big, because it's not as enjoyable to go against. I could see it getting some changes, which would be interesting to see if Games Workshop are thinking in that regard as well, alongside that kind of, is it just flat good or are people not enjoying it? If you're into Magic, you might remember Crack Clan, Ironworks or Eggs, or those kinds of lists that got banned because they were just so unenjoyable to play against. Obviously extreme versions, but maybe the logic stands. Next, Ultramarines took a little hit. So not as bad as I was expecting. Most of their tanks went up 10 points. And to be honest, I think the linchpin of their army, which was Marnius Calgar and the company heroes, that went up a total of 20 points. That is now 315 for that unit, which is very, very expensive. But it was such a good unit at just going, cool, we are going to be this brick of melee damage that you can't get through or can pressure you and can survive a lot longer than it deserves to. So that being gone, I think, is going to force some new dynamics. Obviously, a massive loss was Vanguard is basically dead. Basically dead because Centurions can no longer get Deep Strike from Uriel Ventress, which is pretty big, but they did also go down in points, so maybe someone will make it work by strat reserving them instead. because you can still use the up-down ability, just obviously they can't deep strike. So that remains to be seen. Then in terms of winners, I'm just going to talk about like the major winners. Yeah, there are a couple of others like maybe Drakari going down 10 points for Witches and Kabalites. But 3 new detachments is big. The Custodes one is bloody scary. +1 to wound is always great. However, the fact that the Orc detachment has outshone it, I think, is testament to just how good that detachment potentially is. And then Tau also got a detachment. Cool. If you want to know more about that, go watch Pure Tide Program, because Kyle knows a lot more than me about anything to do with Tau. And I know he's just dropped a video, so go watch his video on that instead. Apologies, I'm not a Tau specialist. I don't think we have any Tau specialists in Black Crow, so sorry. However, we definitely have Custodes specialists, so do go watch Aaron's video on Custodes gains from the Dataslate. I think it's a really exciting time for Custodes players. But the major one is Orcs. If you've watched the Fireside Chat episode doing their tier list, you really should if you enjoy competitive play. Vic and David Gaylard have put the Orcs are likely the best. If you look at some of the Team England players, I think they are all sort of starting to eye up Orcs and go, oh yeah, that list is nasty. So Sustain 2 in the War is pretty damn nasty on those. Are they looters? Yeah, they're looters with those death guns. So I think there's some real potentially nasty Orc lists coming, and weirdly enough, it's Orc shooting. And then finally, something that was really nice to see was kind of a Demons 2.0 index. It was a bit of a shame to see Karanak go to Legends and the Seeker Chariot go to Legends, because I know a lot of people were actually playing the Seeker Chariot. Karanak less so. Obviously, it's just nice to have the 3-headed dog in the game, right? But that index looks real good now. Be'lakor got his own detachment where he can bring in CSM, and he gives all Khorne demons advance and charge, which is really nice. Scarbrand has innate advance and charge. There's a really cool enhancement for if you kill something in combat, you can go back into strategic reserves, which is awesome on a Bloodthirster. So I'm really excited to see what people plan in terms of their how do demons look in the next kind of new meta. I think they're potentially going to be up there. I think there's discussions about sort of how cheap the Great Unclean one is with Endless Gift now as well. So there's definitely some interesting play with the demons alongside just solid scoring units like Fleshhounds having up-down abilities with Deep Strike. So there's definitely something going on with demons, and I'm excited to see what that is. Obviously, it does likely mean that there's not going to be a codex for demons, but I think if you're a Demons player, you're probably not crazy disappointed right now, but possibly start looking at maybe some of your Power Armored brothers that you might want to add to your Chaos Demons at the moment if you just want to future-proof yourself for 11th. Obviously, I have no evidence of that. That is me just taking a bit of a punt and trying to save your wallet. Feel free to completely ignore me. That's absolutely fine, but that's just my opinion. So that's a very, very quick overview of the data slate. Hopefully I've not missed out anything crazy. I know Votan got a change and a couple of others and things like that. However, I don't care. So moving on to the actually cool army, and that's Dark Angels. Let's talk about our winners. It's... Sorry, still got man flu. It's a bit of a weird one, talking winners, because very little changed. The only actual winner was Blade Guard Vets. They went down to 80 points for 3, which is pretty good. 80 points is our kind of flex spot, because you can have Incursors, Intercessors, Reavers. There's probably some others that I'm Intercessors. Did I say Intercessors? I might have said Intercessors already. But 80 points tends to be around that sweet spot. If you go 10 points higher, you get your Infernus. 5 points lower, you get your Assault Intercessors. That kind of stuff. So Blade Guard being a little bit cheaper, I think is potentially very interesting. 20 points down for a 6-man. Maybe add a Judiciary in. There is scope for that being a nice combat fights first brick, particularly if it gets that +1 to wound. So I think that could be quite interesting, and I think it's definitely worth bearing that one in mind. Blood Angels might also be a little bit more interested in Blade Guard Vets, alongside Space Wolves as well. I could definitely see Blade Guard Vets being good in Space Wolves, and I like the idea of Space Wolves as a counter to Orcs as well. So I think Blade Guard going down is good, but this is a Dark Angels series, and we have Inner Circle companions for 10 points extra and a hell of a lot more flexibility. Like, yes, they don't have an innate invuln, but you can give one with them with the Librarian. So it's tough. It's really tough, I think, for Blade Guard to get an argument in Dark Angels. Maybe they're cheap enough, and it's definitely something that I'm like, I really want to test this. It's not something that I have the time to gamble on immediately, but it's definitely something that I will look at in the future. So think about Blade Guard. Don't think too hard, in all honesty, but like, now they're cheaper, good. They might be playable. It's something to investigate. But then the other two units that I kind of put down as winners, although they're not really, is Deathwing Knights and Jumpback Intercessors, because they didn't go up in points. They're in basically every Dark Angels army, and Jumpback Intercessors are in basically every Marine army. So the fact that they didn't go up is good. I think that's a really good call from Games Workshop, because at 90 points, Jumpback Intercessors are very fair. They're good, but they're not very survivable. They're likely to be a bit of a one-shot unit, so that's, keeping them at 90, I think, is very valid, and they also fill a role that otherwise we can't really fill. And especially with the fact that Liberator has lost that +1 to wound, I think could be very, that sort of that nerfs the problem of Jumpback Intercessors, but allows Jumpback Intercessors to keep their 90 points, which I think is really, really key. And then Deathwing Knights, I'm still playing 15 every time. I think every Dark Angels list at least has 10. And I think it's important to do that, to be perfectly honest with you, because they are the reason, alongside Azrael, they are the reason to do it. Azrael probably could have featured up here as another one that didn't get nerfed, because he's in every Dark Angels list. But again, I think that's just because they are currently pointed correctly. I think 250 points for Deathwing Knights is absolutely fine. I think that you need to play them in a certain style, otherwise they are overcosted, because they need that additional movement. If they don't have that additional movement, then no, of course they're not worth it. But playing them in Gladius or in Stormlance, so they've always, they have access to advance and charge, and fallback charge, I think is how you get the best out of your Deathwing Knights, and how you actually sort of make it worth that 250 point price tag. And yeah, Azrael's another one. Didn't go up. 115 points at the moment. I think that's fine. 190 points for him and his Assault Intercessors, which is solid. Like, that's a really good unit for 190. I'm very happy to spend that. But yeah, so I really like that. And overall, the changes that sort of affected us, they were very minimal. So that was good. There weren't really any winners coming out of this. Blade Guard, maybe, does remain to be seen. I'm looking forward to testing them. Suppressors obviously have just suddenly had a bit of a time in the sun. I think maybe they'll get a bit more of a time in the sun, because they're strength 8, damage 2, low AP, long range, which is pretty good into an orc meta. So that is worth bearing in mind. I'm now suddenly thinking about if I need to put some in my list. But yeah, so that's worth bearing in mind. So let's talk losers. So we've kind of covered off that Ultramarines got hit, but obviously that means we got hit as well. Predators went up 10 and 5 points respectively. So the Predator Destructor, which is the autocannon variant, went up 10 points to 140. The las cannon variant went to 135, which is weird because I've never seen it played, but equally I kind of get that everyone will go, cool, well, they've gone up 10 points, we'll just play this 130 point version instead because it's still a chassis and there's still some las cannons attached to it. I still think the Destructor is well worth it. I continue to not play the Annihilator. I don't think it's worth it at all. But like Destructor, 140 points, I'll pay that. That's fine. The Ballistus went up 10 points, which is kind of a shame. But equally, when it was 140, it was competing with a 130 point Predator. So it made sense not to play it. Now that it's 140, that's, possibly a good thing. I think the way that Ultramarines didn't lose their +1 to win, that's probably a good thing that they don't have as much spammable armor. Is it good for us? No. Does it it pushes me more towards the Predator, I think, as well. Just because I don't want to risk that 130 point tank. I don't mind shoving it up. 140, a little bit more sketchy. I know it's only 10 points difference, but it adds up. I think that the Ballistus, its stock has gone down. If you're a Gladius Dark Angels player, your Vindicators have gone up 10 points. It sucks. It was correct. Vindicators were everywhere. Most lists were just jamming 3 of them, so they were very clearly undercosted for their damage output. They are good. Equally, I feel like Vindicators and Predators, be careful because they might go to Legends soon. And I think, again, have no evidence of that, just my opinion. But I think, Vindicators are still very good. At 185, I would definitely still pay for them. I think it's more relevant for non-Dark Angels, but it's definitely something I would bear in mind. Next, the Lion inadvertently took a bit of a nerf. Because Stormlance took a nerf, because its reactive move can now only be used for mounted and infantry, and obviously that was everything before, and you could reactive move the Lion because he's a monster. Obviously now you can't, which does really suck. Like, that for me was the last thing that left the Lion in the argument. It's like, cool, you have a lone op that can reactive move. It's extremely durable and it has fights first. Like, that's really quite good. Now that it's lost another thing that the Lion could use to defend itself, and obviously if you've watched this series much, you'll know that I think the Lion is not survivable enough, which again sounds crazy with a 3-up invulnerable save, but it's very swingy. So that, stripping more ways that you can defend a Lion, I think only makes him poorer, which is a real shame, and I do think it was a mistake not to either drop his points or to make this choice. I'm not really sure why this choice was made. Equally, I was thinking about a Ultramarines version of Stormlance with Rabute free CPing it to give himself the reactive move. So that could have been why. Maybe they sort of clocked that build was actually looking really quite good, and sort of nipped it in the bud. Obviously, we're talking about extremely high quality players that are playing as playtesters. They probably spotted something that maybe we didn't until after the data slate. I think that's why sometimes things get preemptively nerfed. A little bit like the Minority Report, I guess, but that's really solid. I think that it's a shame. Again, I think the Lion does need to come down in points, because it was, again, we're talking Rabute, not the Lion, benefiting there. And like seeing him at 315 and Mortarion at 300, I am disappointed in that. I don't think that makes much sense. And I'd be interested to chat to some of like the rules team about like where that logic is at. So if I catch any of them, I'll have a chat with them about it, because that does genuinely interest me. But yeah, like I'm not sure how the Lion could get balanced. Like, how do you balance a 3-up invuln fights first character? That's tough. That's not a job that I would want to try and do. And then a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment. Every other terrible forgotten Dark Angels unit was also a loser in that. So your Land Speeders, your Ravenwing Black Knights, I guess, unfortunately still, Ezekiel, Asmodai, Belial. There's quite a few that missed out. I think the thing that I did really want to see was the named characters for Dark Angels gaining something good. Just to like, because they're, especially Belial and Asmodai, they are such beautiful models that I really wanted to get them on the table. I love Azrael, like he's incredible, but like those models are also stunning and they deserve their time in the sun, particularly that Asmodai, and like just to make him so poor that he's absolutely not worth it kind of sucks. Maybe there's a scope now that Blade Guard are 80 points for 3, 6 Blade Guard with Asmodai. It's quite cheap, it's quite killy. There's potentially scope for it. But equally, I think a normal chaplain might be better than Asmodai, unfortunately, in that context. Which does suck a bit. But, it is one of those things. It's one of those things that I would like Games Workshop to do in future, but it's not something that's like crazily impacting the game. So it's not something that I'm going, oh God, GW sort this out, like, because they don't need to right now. And as long as the game is balanced, then I'm not going to complain. And at the moment, I think the game is quite balanced, maybe with the exception of Orcs, and potentially a little bit with Eldari as well. But equally, these are still initial reactions. So, we talked losers. Let's go on to the meta and the ecosystem. We kind of already started going there. Orcs is bestest. I think we've got to kind of wake up that shooting orc list is looking extremely powerful. Shock attack guns are very good. Tactical brigade has just taken a nerf. Fine. However, the looters being as good as they are now, tank busters still being extremely good. There is a lot of very good orc shooting units. Giving them sustain 2 is brutal. And also, I think the fact that they can put something in the war until their next command phase, that is very powerful with things like Meganobs, or there's quite a few different orc units that benefit from that. So I think we are going to see orcs a lot. I've heard people saying that if you want to get into the shadow round of a super major, you need to have a plan for orcs, and I think that's a very valid comment. Be ready for orcs. Maybe it's time to get the Gladiator Reapers out. I'm definitely thinking about it for sure. Speaking of, Ultramarines Gladius is still looking strong. I think there's definitely still an armor skew build, especially with like Reapers, Predators. What else? I mean, Vindicators still, right? Like Rabute is awesome. He avoided any kind of nerfs. They've still got their Oath buff. Like, that's great. So I think Ultramarines Gladius is probably still good to go. I will do a video on that on Saturday for the Primarchs playbook, so give that a look when that comes up. Personally, I'm still worried about Eldari, but equally, I have a lot of personal bias against Eldari. I don't enjoy playing them. So it's really worth bearing in mind that when you listen to creators like myself, they might be talking with quite a significant amount of internal bias. Eldari, I think there are problems with them. I think they're extremely good. And I think it's well worth bearing in mind that in the right hands, or the wrong hands, I guess, they are incredibly scary in terms of that move blocking and really kind of bullying you to force you to play their game. So be wary of that when you're building your list. Think about where units might be able to fly. Think about maybe a couple of Overwatch threats that you can sort of threaten different areas of the board with, that kind of stuff, so that they can't sort of battle focus you all over the battlefield, that kind of thing. So that's worth bearing in mind. It's really good for us that Bridgehead is gone. That's super positive, because Bridgehead was a nasty matchup. Like, they really liked trying to kill Deathwing Knights with those big blobs of Scions. They were built to kill expensive single units like Deathwing Knights. So it's great to see that gone. Really, really good for us. What the next kind of guard will look like, I don't know. I'm excited to see, but it's good that Bridgehead has taken a hit here. Chaos Demons are back. Awesome, great. I love Chaos Demons. I think they're really cool. Be'lakor is looking extremely strong, which is lovely because he should be really strong. He's still got those very powerful abilities, such as the 18-inch Lone Op aura, and Bloodthirsters being able to gain advance and charge is very good. Being able to up down them after they kill something in combat is very, very good. What's a unit that they probably don't want to shot in combat? It's Deathwing Knights. So bring your Deathwing Knights to the party, because that's the way that you can get them. Don't let them go up and then just punch them to death. So yeah, bear that in mind. But Chaos Demons are definitely a thing again. And like 9-inch scouting Great Unclean Ones is something you've got to be aware of. Then just a kind of like a comment about the meta. Is this the era of multiple small units? I think it might be. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I think Ultramarines are probably still going to lean into sort of their armor heavy builds. I think we're going to see lots of orc shooting with lots of good transports. I think Emperor's Children are looking like they're going to be MSU. CSM, definitely an MSU build as well. So like, there's a lot of different and very, very interesting MSU armies out there. So like being ready to kind of prey on those armies, I think is going to be important. So like working out how you handle lots of marine bodies. So for example, I built a list recently. Actually, the list you're about to see, I think, has about 65 marine bodies, including the 15 Deathwing Knights. So there's a lot of bodies there to bear in mind. Okay, let's jump on the list. So this is a post-slate Stormlance list that I created. It was a sort of an initial reaction. I don't know. It's not actually what I'm going to be submitting to South Coast Super Major, but it's reasonably similar. So Azrael, because Azrael's great, he's going to be with some Assault Intercessors because that standard package is brilliant. We don't need to change it right now. There's been no changes to it. Intercessors, again, sticky. Let's just make sure that we're sticking objectives, and then that gives us agency. I also think that Intercessors are extremely good at just making sure that the problem units that you're going up against, like maybe Fights First Witches with Lilith, or Zodgrod's Grots, that kind of stuff. Intercessors are very efficient at dealing with those kinds of units because of the 20 shots that they spit out. And it's very nice that they have the option to advance, shoot, and then charge because of Stormlance. So I really like that one. Then we've got 3x5 JPIs. A lot of that is anti-Eldari because they've got the hand flamers, which are really nice for Eldari. Also quite nice against looters. Obviously, they're winning on 5s, but they're ignoring cover and they're killing one every time they fail a save. So that's no bad thing. But then also they're doing those impact mortals, great against looters. Great against Eldari, able to fly over those move blocks. Those kinds of things are very relevant, very positive. So I really like JPIs in the new meta, and that's why 15 of them are straight in. Next, we've got a unit of Vanguard Vets, basically to act as a more durable fourth unit of JPIs. They've got the shields. They're very good at killing orcs. They're very good at flying over Eldari screens. They've got the lethal hits, which can mean that they can punch up. And AP1 is going to be a lot less relevant now that things like demons, orcs, and Eldari kind of, because a lot of them have 3-up saves, but still, it's relevant. But yeah, so some Van Vets, 2 Predator Destructors to just keep up that long range pain, sort of deal with maybe those trucks, things like that. And we've got some Incursors, again, because Incursors are just efficient. They make the Predators better. They make the Intercessors better. The Meltamine is no bad thing. It's good against a lot of one-wound infantry, which it does sound like we're going to be playing against, or flexing into things like Chaos Knights, which are also looking very solid. And actually, the points changes on Imperial Knights might mean we see more of them as well. Then Infiltrators, just because I'm still a little bit cautious. Demons did lose their 6-inch drop, but I think it's still worth just having some kind of defense for that. And then we've got 3x5 Deathwing Knights, because 3x5 Deathwing Knights just really solid. Advance, charge, deal with your opponent's stuff, start them all on the board. Just learn positioning in terms of like improving where you need to be to mitigate that movement. Be aggressive with that deployment. Force your opponent to respond. Sometimes I will put all 15 in exactly the same place and just go, these guys are as close as they safely can be to your deployment zone. They are going to run at you. You're going to have to deal with the units that you are scared to deal with. That is such a mental victory over your opponent already. So bear that in mind when you're thinking, what do I need to do to make sure that that my Deathwing Knights, I'm going to get the most out of them? A lot of their battle is mental, as well as when they're actually rolling dice, because they are efficient, they're great at surviving, and they are so scary to most people's brains. As I've said in so many different videos, the most common thing said to me is, I don't know how I'm going to deal with 15 Deathwing Knights. Good, keep it that way. 15 Deathwing Knights, still very good. Overall, I think the Dataslate is a win. I think it's really positive for the game. I'm a little bit nervous about orcs. I think we have every right to be a little bit nervous about orcs. They could be quite oppressive. That shooting is no joke. And the looters in 8 rerolls at 50 points, like at 100 points for a 10-man, that's nasty. So we'll have to wait and see. Bomb squigs are still a thing. which is upsetting. But they did get nerfed, which is good. But yeah, so overall, I think we are again it's a win for the rules team again. I think they've done great. I continue to say that they are doing very well at the moment. I love what they're doing. I think they are really making a very fun game to play. So I'm a big fan of what they're doing, and I would like to see some changes to those Dark Angel specific characters, because it is a bit of a shame not to see them more. But that's just my wish, because I'm a Dark Angels player. It's not essential to the game. We still have some good options out there. All right. Make sure that you head over to our sponsors, which is Glasshammer Gaming and Terrainforge. You can use code Black Crow at checkout for Glasshammer to get 5% off. And you can get use code BCG5 to get 5% off at Terrainforge. Excuse me, sorry. You can also become a super member now. Just like you can give my super member a little kiss if you like, because my super member is obviously Jake Harding from Vanguard Tactics. So don't kiss him without checking with him first. But I do love Jake. And then you can also go and join my Patreon, which is Angelis Mortis. If you want coaching from a complete fucking idiot, then you can come and talk to me as well, because I do coaching. I'm currently still the top Dark Angels player in the UK, and I think possibly the world at the moment, which is a bit bonkers. But, fuck it, we ball. I'm going to keep being incredibly loudmouthed and stupid and hope that it keeps working. So, yeah. Stay loyal, fuckers, and enjoy the slate. See you later.